Duke Hugo and Lucia stepped outside the castle for a quiet evening walk. He gently took her hand as they descended the steps together. "Imagine my surprise, entering the drawing room and finding it overflowing with boxes," he said with a faint smile. Lucia let out a soft laugh. "Trying everything on took up my entire afternoon." Hugo raised an amused eyebrow. "So, you tried on every piece?" She nodded, her cheeks slightly flushed. "Yes." As they walked through the quiet garden, the soft crunch of gravel underfoot, Lucia's thoughts wandered. She glanced at the man beside her. Does he realize? Moments like this make me happier than any lavish gift ever could? Still, she recalled the gifts. Every piece was stunning. "Did you pick them out yourself?" "I did," she replied. "I did look through all of them. Though, I may have just bought everything they had," he thought with a quiet chuckle. "Did you like them?" he asked. "Very much. Thank you," she replied with a smile. She tilted her head, teasing. "You seem to know a lot about women's accessories." As soon as she said it, she regretted it. Was that too pointed? She thought, watching him pause. "I should apologize." She stopped walking. Hugh. "Vivian." He turned toward her. She hesitated, then continued. "Can we leave the past in the past? Before we were married, I mean. I'll try not to bring it up again." He looked at her for a long moment before his gaze softened. "I didn't take it that way." He paused. "Do you remember when you asked to change a clause in our contract?" Lucia nodded slowly. "You said that if I ever took a mistress, you didn't want to hear about it from anyone else. That if I ever stopped loving you, or cared for someone else, I had to be the one to tell you." "Yes, I remember," she said, tension creeping into her voice. He gently took her hand. "You don't need to worry. I wouldn't take a mistress behind your back. I wouldn't fall out of love with you, or leave you. So, please have a little faith in me." Lucia's heart skipped. She was caught off guard by the sincerity in his voice. Why is he telling me this? I was the one who misspoke. I shouldn't be the one bringing up his past. She looked at him silently, her face warm. "So then, why?" she whispered. "Why?" he echoed, puzzled. She didn't answer. He studied her quietly. "Why are you looking at me like that?" Lucia remembered something Sir Croton once said, "There isn't a soul in this world capable of emotionally wounding him." Then why did he look so hurt? Then why wear that expression, like I just pierced your heart? "I don't understand." Guilt washed over her. It stung, but strangely, she didn't want the feeling to go away. Does this mean I actually matter to him? "I understand your hesitation," Hugo said gently. "You don't trust me. And I've given you reasons not to. I mishandled things with Sophia Lawrence. I focused on work, dismissed your presence. We didn't even have a proper wedding. And on our first night, I was selfish. Even now, I keep making mistakes," he thought. "I'll do better. Please, give me that chance." Vivian blinked. "But why? What are you hoping for? Is he just being kind? Or is it something more?" "I don't hold your past against you," she said softly. Hugo looked surprised. "Really?" "I don't have the right to," she murmured, and his eyes flinched at her words. "No, he couldn't possibly feel that way about me," she thought, turning away. He stepped closer. "I do trust you," she said, her voice steadier. "You do?" he asked. "Yes. I trust that you'd never betray me without telling me first. You keep your word." He stood frozen for a moment. She can be so sharp, cutting, even. But then she lifts me back up with such grace. Everything's tangled. I've always solved problems by cutting through them, but this time, it's not that simple. "Why do you want me to trust you?" she asked, drawing his gaze. He hesitated. "Why? I'm not sure myself. But with her, it matters. With anyone else, I wouldn't care what they thought. But with you, your trust means everything." "How can you live under the same roof as someone you don't trust?" he asked. He regretted the question the moment it left his lips. We're getting closer to something real. Yet still circling the same doubts, Lucia thought. I keep hoping he'll fall in love with me. But maybe that's too vague a dream. Is it really this simple? She finally looked up, voice calm. So, what you're saying is, you want to be a devoted husband, and you want me to believe that? He nodded. He's a duke and a knight. Trust is a necessity to him. Maybe that's why he's asking. It doesn't explain everything, but it tells me enough. He does care for me. She inhaled deeply. This is enough, for now. I'll trust you. But whether that trust lasts, depends on you. Her words made him flinch. She resumed walking, descending the steps quietly. If that was a joke, it's not funny, he said, half smiling. I'm serious, she replied, not turning around. He followed after her. But inside, his thoughts were racing. What do I have to do to earn her trust completely? If she hears even one foolish rumor, I might lose her all over again. I should speak to Fabian, he decided, slipping an arm around her shoulder as they walked on. The next morning, Ant arrived at Lucia's parlor. Your Grace. It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance. I am Ant, the proprietor of a small boutique, she said with a polite bow. 2 assistants stood behind her, bowing in unison. Lucia blinked. Ant. The name sounded familiar, pulling at the edges of a memory, one from her dreams. She remembered now. Auntie, the renowned designer admired by noblewomen throughout the capital. Welcome, Lucia said, offering a warm, if slightly reserved, smile. I've been told you're here to assist me today. It's truly an honor to meet you, Duchess, Ant replied with a spark of excitement in her voice. The night before, Hugo had mentioned it offhandedly. A designer will visit tomorrow. Now that we're in the capital, you'll need new attire. You can't rely on the previous Duchess's altered dresses anymore, not for the kind of social events we'll be attending. Lucia hadn't thought much of it at the time. She'd assumed it meant choosing 1 or 2 new dresses. But now, standing before racks of gowns and carefully laid out sketches, she realized he'd meant a complete overhaul of her wardrobe. All right, she thought, inwardly flustered. Hugh made it sound so simple. I thought this was just about a dress or 2, not an entire boutique's worth. Her brow furrowed slightly. I already have enough clothes. I really should be more careful about expenses. Just 1 gown should be enough. Ant gestured politely to a nearby seating area. Please, Your Grace. Shall we sit? As they moved, Ant silently assessed her client. She doesn't seem easy to persuade, and the Duke did say she was frugal. This won't be simple. But Ant had no intention of backing down. I can't miss this opportunity. She recalled how the Duke had once bought every piece of jewelry at her cousin's store in Sepia. If he's willing to spend like that, I need to secure this client. Her assistants exchanged whispers. I've never seen Madame Ant so determined, one murmured. Neither have I, the other replied. Ant opened a sleek portfolio and handed Lucia a beautifully bound catalogue. These are some of our latest designs. Please take your time. Lucia began flipping through the pages, a strange sense of familiarity washing over her. I've seen these before, in my dreams. Ant studied her expression. Is there nothing that appeals to you, Your Grace? I'm sorry if the collection isn't quite what you were expecting, she said, tense but composed. Lucia quickly looked up. No, it's not that. The designs are beautiful. I just don't really know much about fashion. I'd rather leave it to you. Ant froze for a beat. Something appropriate? That's the most difficult kind of brief. But she composed herself. Of course, Your Grace. May I take your measurements? As her assistants began the process, Ant observed closely. The popular styles now emphasize the bust, but that won't suit her figure. She's slender, gracefully so. Better to highlight her waistline. Something clean and elegant. She's not conventionally stunning, but there's a unique charm about her. Would you mind if I made a few adjustments to your current dress? Ant asked sincerely. Lucia nodded, watching as Ant got to work. Alterations can do wonders, Ant thought, carefully pinning fabric. And with her clear complexion, even minimal makeup will make a difference. She really is striking, subtly so. You have a quiet presence, Your Grace, Ant said as she made final adjustments. With the right styling, I believe you'll leave a strong impression. Lucia looked into the mirror, taken aback. Is this really the same dress? It looks so different. I must say, I'm impressed, she added, turning to Ant. Ant's eyes lit up. Thank you, Your Grace. If you're pleased, perhaps I could show you a few more design options. Later that evening, Hugo returned home. As he walked down the hallway and saw Lucia, he immediately noticed her distant expression. I'm home, he said gently, but she didn't respond. Frowning, he approached and cupped her face. Vivian? What's wrong? You look troubled. She didn't answer. He turned sharply. Jerome. Since Madame Ant's visit, Her Grace has seemed distressed, Jerome said quietly from behind. Were they rude to you? Hugo asked, now gently shaking Lucia's shoulder. She shook her head. No, it's not that. I've done something I'm ashamed of. What do you mean? He asked, more gently now. She didn't respond. Vivian, he pressed, concern flickering in his eyes. I don't know what came over me, she admitted, cheeks red. I thought I'd just look at a few dresses. But I ended up ordering so much. It wasn't planned. He raised an eyebrow. That's what had you looking like the world was ending. She flushed. I commissioned 19 dresses. There was a pause. And shoes. And accessories. And cosmetics, she added in a smaller voice. Hugo blinked, then let out a short, amused exhale. 19, you say? Not 190. I must have overestimated Madame Ant's powers of persuasion. He turned, clearly trying not to laugh. Hugo. Don't walk away, we're not finished. Lucia called after him. I've been out all day, he said over his shoulder. Let me take a bath. Then we'll talk. You might not feel so calm once you hear how much I spent. He smirked. And if I don't flinch, what's my reward? Reward. Every wager needs one. I didn't agree to a wager. Too late, he replied, already heading up the stairs. You have until I'm done bathing. Hugh. Listen to me for once. She watched him disappear, flustered. When she turned, the maids were all looking away, clearly pretending not to have heard the entire exchange. Oh no. I completely forgot they were here. Just then, Jerome approached. Shall I have the maids draw your bath, Your Grace? Lucia blinked. Why? Well, you haven't had one yet today, and His Grace is already upstairs. Her face turned crimson. Yes, please. As you wish, Your Grace. Duke Hugo entered Lucia's chambers, his robe loosely tied. The room was quiet. She must still be bathing, he thought as he stepped inside. His gaze fell on an envelope left on the table. Is this the purchase order? He murmured, picking it up. As he scanned the contents, his brow lifted slightly. She didn't even spend a fifth of the advance, he noted. I'll ask the designer to draft a secondary form. Then, with a thoughtful pause, he added, I'll have a copy made for Vivian, with adjusted prices. That way, she won't feel guilty. She really is too frugal. In the bathroom, Lucia sat immersed in the warm water, her mind replaying the day's events. Duchess, just relax and count the days to your grand debut in the capital, and had said, her voice full of excitement. Lucia let out a quiet sigh. I can't believe I let her talk me into it, she thought, picturing Madame Ant's smile. I'm hopeless. A maid approached and knelt by the tub. Your Grace, may I take your hand? She asked gently. Lucia hesitated, a flicker of guilt rising. I shouldn't be spending so much. Maybe I should cancel the order altogether. Just then, she heard the maids whisper. She looked up to see them hastily exiting the room. Hugo stood inside, leaning against the wall, arms folded. You were taking too long, he said simply. Hugh. That doesn't mean you can just come in while I'm still bathing. He raised an eyebrow, amused. Why not? We've bathed together before. She turned her face away, clearly flustered. Not while the maids are still around. It's embarrassing. You don't know how much the staff gossips. Unbothered, Hugo stepped closer. Well, why don't we continue our conversation, she said, but paused when he reached out and lifted her chin. I came for my reward, he said with a faint smirk. Her voice lowered. You saw the order forms. I did. And, like I said, your husband can afford it. His tone was calm. Now, what will you give me as a reward? If you can't decide, I'll choose myself. Lucia tensed slightly under his gaze. How can he be so unfazed? I've been stressing over this all day, and he acts like it's nothing. What did you have in mind? She asked quietly. He gave her a look that made her instinctively cover herself, her cheeks flushed. That's it, she said, embarrassed. You've gotten worse with your teasing. Hugo chuckled. It's more efficient this way. We'll just need another bath afterward anyway. He untied his robe and stepped in beside her. Come here. Lucia turned her face, embarrassed but faintly amused. It's strange how comfortable I've become with this. A while ago, I would have been too shocked to move. She leaned into him without hesitation. As he held her close, Hugo thought back. When we first married, she was so shy, she couldn't even kiss me. And now. Later that night, he lay beside her, watching her sleep in his arms. Gently, he brushed her hair back. She stirred. Oh, I'm still a little sore, she murmured sleepily. He smiled faintly. The coronation's been scheduled. It'll be in a month. Lucia blinked awake. That's later than I thought. He shrugged. The gap between a state funeral and a coronation is mostly tradition. There's even a formal rejection ritual where the nobles insist, and the king declines 3 times. Lucia sighed. A month. Summer will be over. What am I supposed to do with all those summer gowns? You'll have plenty of chances to wear them, he assured her. Word of your arrival is spreading. Invitations will come flooding in. She frowned. You mean tea parties? I thought none were allowed until the coronation. Officially, yes. But private gatherings happen all the time. Even now, there are parties every day. Oh, I see. She paused. I'm not sure I'm ready to jump into the social scene just yet. Hugo reached for her hand. You don't have to if you're not ready. Lucia hesitated. But if I stay hidden away for a month, people will talk. They'll think something's wrong with me, and that'll reflect poorly on you. Are you really okay with that? He smiled softly. I don't care what anyone else thinks. You're the only one that matters. I couldn't care less about what the rest of high society thinks, Hugo mused. Vivian was striking even without all the glitz. But the capital's elite, hostile and arrogant, picked people apart for amusement. The gown they wore, the way they applied makeup, nothing escaped their scrutiny. If Vivian were to be hurt by people like that, he was thinking, when she spoke and cut through his thoughts. I've reconsidered, she said, her tone measured but firm. I think it might be better to ease into things with something smaller. A tea party, maybe. Just to get a sense of the atmosphere before attending something as grand as the coronation. She clenched her fists. I can't let another odd rumor about you start because of me, even if it doesn't bother you. Hugo arched an eyebrow but remained silent. Lucia, resting lightly against him, continued. There's an event next week I could go to. It seems rumors are already making their rounds. He gave a small nod, quiet approval. If that's what you want, he said simply. She recalled her life before Hugo. Count Metten always pushed me to attend balls and nighttime events. There was rarely an opportunity for tea parties. I wonder how different they'll be here, compared to the ones in the north, she thought. From what she remembered, capital society was obsessed with appearances, quick to criticize and quicker still to gossip. At the few tea parties she had attended, hosts were sometimes picked apart for their clothing, and reputations were left in tatters. Still, those experiences prepared me for that incident in the north, she thought. Even so, 19 dresses felt excessive, especially with summer ending soon. Hugh, I've been thinking again. Maybe I should return. Enough about that, Hugo interrupted, his voice firm. If you return those dresses, people will talk. Just like you feared. They'll say the Taran household is struggling. Her lips curved gently at his words. Madame Aunt told me you visited her boutique yourself, she said, her voice soft. I did, he admitted. That alone gave me this strange surge of confidence, she thought, remembering how touched she'd felt. You're so lucky, Your Grace. What a wonderful husband you have. Aunt had gushed, her cheeks flushed. Lucia tilted her head slightly, eyes studying him. It's not like you, she said thoughtfully. I still can't quite believe you went out of your way to get those gifts. She smiled faintly. Why did you do it? Hugo frowned. Do I need a reason for everything? Her lips curved. If you won't tell me, I'll just have to assume the worst. He narrowed his eyes. Such as? That you were afraid I'd embarrass you, show up in rags and shame the Taran name. He shook his head. Not true. That's not it at all, he said, looking flustered. Then why? She pressed. He hesitated. Why is she always asking why? He thought. What do I say when I'm not even sure myself? I don't have a reason, he finally said, voice low. Can't it be enough that I just wanted to? Her expression softened, her smile gentle. It's enough, she said quietly, resting her head against his chest. Hugo exhaled, leaning back slightly. Sometimes I think I need a translator just to keep up with our conversations. She looked up, amused. Really? I don't feel that way. He looked at her, puzzled. She rested her cheek against him again, her blush returning. I just worry about the weight of it all, she murmured. He blinked. The weight. She didn't answer. Her thoughts were far away again. Hugo studied her face, calm and peaceful. Is she asleep? A flicker of worry crossed his features. Am I imagining it, or does she care more than I thought? He gently pulled her closer, holding her as they drifted off. Sir Philip sat quietly in his cabin, staring at the open book before him. It's time I left this village, he thought. On rare occasions, Phillips had imagined settling somewhere, but the feeling never lasted, soon replaced by the urge to move on. This endless wandering, perhaps it was punishment. He'd left behind too many ghosts. As dusk fell, he looked toward the mountains. I won't make it over before nightfall, he murmured. Later that night, his eyes stayed fixed on the campfire. I never imagined I'd find someone who had ingested 3-leaf mugwort right before her first bleeding, here of all places. He recalled Lucia describing her symptoms. I've treated patients whose cycles were disrupted by mugwort, but she was different. She did it to herself, and I had no part in it. The world still manages to surprise me. His mind drifted to the past. He had torn out the page that held his family's secret, intending to forget it. But it was too late. The remedy was already burned into his memory. He remembered his final words to Lucia, I hope you'll be blessed with a beautiful child. Even knowing how hopeless it all was, something about her had stirred joy in him. A girl in perfect condition, discovered not by him, but still deeply moving. Phillips vividly remembered the day he visited the duchy with Damien in his arms. Hugo's tiny hand had held his tightly. He had watched Hugo grow into a fine man, yet to him, he was always the little master. He had only seen him from afar in recent years, but always with pride. Years had passed since they'd buried him. The one he'd poured all his hopes into. Now just a cold body beneath the earth. His voice trembled. After that, the Duke gave up everything in the north. He disappeared into the battlefield. That was the end of everything I tried to build. A hollow laugh escaped him, a failed attempt to stifle the tears. Ha ha ha. My last memory is watching him ride off. Ha ha ha. Oh, Master Damien. His voice broke as he sobbed. In the private garden of the palace, Crown Prince Hesse sat with his wife, Beth, the future queen. She gently braided his hair as they spoke. When I brought up inviting the Duchess, the Duke refused outright, Hesse said, tension in his voice. I didn't expect it would be this hard just to meet my own sister, he added with a sigh. The rumors about the Duke being overprotective seem to be true. They say he's keeping her out of sight so no one else gets a glimpse of her. Beth looked slightly flushed as she responded, that's what they say. His being unreasonable, Hesse muttered. All I want is to get to know her. I suppose this is his way of reminding me she's the Duchess now. I never even met her before they married. When I tried to speak to her, he glared at me like I was a threat. The Duke actually said something like that? Beth asked, surprised. Hesse nodded. He did. Beth thought for a moment. Duke Taran is known for being calculating. Maybe he's worried you'll use your connection to influence her. You really think he's being that strategic? I do. He's always several steps ahead. Hesse sat up straighter. Though it was understandable for a husband to be protective, the Duke's caution felt excessive. Still, Beth's explanation matched the look he'd received that day. Shall I speak with him? Beth offered. You do that? Yes, she said firmly. And when I do, I'll refer to her as the Duchess, not the Princess. No matter how much he insists otherwise, he can't stop me from inviting her to a ladies' gathering. Just leave it to me. Later that day, in the palace corridor, Queen Beth encountered Duke Taran following his audience with the Crown Prince. It's been a while, Duke Taran. Were you just leaving His Majesty's chambers? It has, Your Majesty, Duke Hugo replied with a respectful nod. I heard the Duchess is now in the capital, Beth said, smiling faintly. Taran's eyes narrowed slightly. This again. They just won't leave Vivian alone, he thought. She's become quite the talk of the capital. Some say there's more interest in her than the coronation. It's all idle gossip, he said curtly. Perhaps, Beth said, but there's usually some truth in rumors. I'd like to meet her before her formal debut. I'm planning a luncheon, something small. I'll send the invitation today. I hope she'll be able to attend. Taran paused, his tone measured. Vivian must make her own choices. I don't speak for her, but I'm sure she'll be honored by the invitation. Wonderful. Safe travels, Duke Taran, Beth said warmly. As he departed, Beth turned sharply to her brother, Count David Ramiz, who had accompanied her. Why were you so silent? She snapped. You didn't say a word. That man. David, she cut in sharply. Duke Taran holds the same rank as our father. You know better than to speak so carelessly. The palace has ears everywhere. I was respectful. He was the one being. Mind your words, Beth said, pressing her fingers to her temple. Whether you find him rude or not, he has every right to address you however he chooses. But Beth. Enough. Her voice was firm. I've told you many times, watch your tongue. You're not a child anymore. Father was far too lenient with you. She turned away. I won't walk with you any further. Please leave on your own. And you'd be wise to rethink how you treat Duke Taran. David clenched his fists. He's just a brute, he muttered under his breath. Why should I show him any respect? Meanwhile, Duke Taran walked down the corridor alone, his thoughts drifting to his wife. It's been so long since I left early. Maybe tonight we can have dinner together. Back in Roham, we dine together every night. She'll like that, won't she? A faint smile appeared on his face. But his moment of peace was short-lived. Sophia Lawrence was approaching from the opposite end of the hall. Another one to deal with today, he thought, deliberately walking past her without acknowledgement. Your Grace, she called softly, making him pause. He turned slightly. Have you been well? She asked hesitantly. It's been a while. Congratulations on your marriage. And to you, Hugo replied. I heard you married Count Elvin. He's done well for himself in business. Yes, thank you, she murmured, her voice trembling. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. I'm here to meet Her Majesty today. I see. Then I'll take my leave. Before he could move, she reached out and held his sleeve. Will you wait? She said, voice quivering. He looked down at her hand coldly and pulled away. Are you happy? She asked quietly. He didn't respond, simply turned and walked away. Sophia stood frozen, watching him go. You're really just going to leave like that? Not even a word of comfort. Tears streamed down her cheeks. How could you say those things to me, and act as if nothing happened? I only agreed to my marriage because I couldn't bear seeing you with someone else. How pathetic of me. Why couldn't it have been me, Hugo? Her knees gave out, and she collapsed to the floor in quiet sobs. The next day, in her chambers, Lucia met with Ant, her dressmaker. This is your first visit to the Imperial Palace? Allow me to help you, Ant said with bright enthusiasm. There's no need to trouble yourself, Lucia replied politely. Nonsense. First impressions here are everything. You need to look your best, Ant insisted. Especially after the generous advance I received, she added to herself. Leave everything to me. Lucia looked uncertain. I wouldn't want to impose. It's no trouble, Your Grace. Designing for you brings me joy, Ant said, cheeks flushed. Money aside, you're my muse. Though the patronage doesn't hurt, she thought. Lucia lowered her gaze. Then, I'll trust you. Ant's eyes sparkled. To be honest, I already have something in mind. Already? Lucia asked, surprised. For your meeting with the Queen, I envision something elegant and modest. With your youthful features, we'll add just enough maturity to show confidence and poise. Sophisticated but lively, like someone who could still be single. She smiled brightly, her excitement clear.
The doors to the palace hall opened with quiet grandeur, and Lucia stepped inside, calm and composed despite the lavish surroundings. A court attendant led her forward until she stood before the queen. "Welcome, Duchess," Queen Beth said warmly, a soft smile on her lips. "I've been looking forward to your arrival."
Lucia bowed.
"Thank you for the invitation, Your Majesty." Beth studied her. Among all the princesses I've met, she really does stand out, she thought. "I'm very glad you could come," she said, still seated. Her build is so slight, no wonder people find her delicate. "I'm honored to be here, Your Majesty," Lucia replied sincerely.
Beth observed her closely. So the rumors about her beauty weren't entirely exaggerated.
"You carry yourself well, Duchess. When I was your age, I could barely get a sentence out without stammering." "You're very kind," Lucia said modestly.
The queen chuckled. "And you speak only when needed.
That reminds me of your husband. Duke Taran isn't exactly talkative either."
Lucia lowered her gaze slightly. "I apologize.
I'm not great at conversation."
"It's a good trait," the queen said gently.
"I'm surrounded by talkers all day. Someone like you is a breath of fresh air."
She studied Lucia for a moment in thoughtful silence. She seemed sincere.
No pretense, no flattery, just honest politeness.
It's surprising, given who she's married to. I wonder what their dynamic is like. Does she feel at ease with him?
"I heard the Duke recently purchased quite a collection of jewelry for you, from Sepia Jeweler, wasn't it?"
Beth said, her tone light. Lucia smiled faintly.
"The story has grown in the telling, Your Majesty."
Beth raised an eyebrow playfully.
"Perhaps.
Still, it would be lovely to visit your estate someday."
"I'd like to see the jewels myself."
"It would be my pleasure to host you."
"I'll make the arrangements."
The queen's voice softened. "It does get a little lonely here at the palace."
"I would enjoy your company whenever you have the time." "I'll always make time if you invite me, Your Majesty." As she sipped her tea, Beth found herself drawing comparisons. She's so different from Quay's sister, Catherine. I can understand why Quays wants to cut her off.
"I'll have to find a suitor for her before things get worse."
Out loud, she said, "Shall we go to the Rose Chateau for tea? I recall you stayed there briefly once." Lucia nodded, a faint smile on her lips.
"Yes. The roses weren't in bloom at the time."
"I'm glad I'll get to see them now."
"They are at their peak this time of year," Beth said.
"I should ensure she doesn't cross paths with Countess Elvin, especially given the Countess's history with the Duke." Meanwhile, in the King's chamber, Quays was speaking with Duke Taran. "So, what's your take on the matter?" he asked plainly. Before Hugo could respond, a butler stepped in and bowed. "Your Majesty, pardon the interruption.
I have an update for His Grace." Quays waved a hand.
"Go ahead."
"Thank you."
"The Duchess has just finished her meal with the Queen and is now having tea at the Rose Chateau."
"Oh, yes. I remember the Queen mentioning it. Was that what you were discussing with the Chamberlain earlier? Checking on your wife?"
"Aren't you being a bit overprotective?"
Hugo stood abruptly.
Quays blinked, startled. "I'll return shortly," Hugo said, already moving.
"Where are you going?" "You startled me," Quays asked. "My wife is here."
"I should visit her," Hugo said, his expression firm.
Quays frowned.
"The Rose Chateau's on the far end of the palace grounds."
"He talks like it's just next door. Is it something urgent? Couldn't you send someone?" "No, nothing urgent," Hugo replied.
"But I don't rely on others to deliver personal matters." Quays stared, confused. "What?"
"I'll be back in time for the meeting," Hugo added and walked out.
"Did he just leave?" Quays asked, dazed. "Unbelievable." Turning to his butler, he asked, "What's your honest take on this?" "It seems His Grace simply missed the Duchess," the butler replied.
Quays sighed.
"That's what I thought too.
I just needed someone else to say it."
After all this time, still acting like newlyweds. Elsewhere in the palace, is my sister still at the Rose Chateau?
Count David Ramis asked a passing servant. "I'm not sure, my lord."
I heard she was having tea with a guest.
He frowned.
"Why go all that way for tea? It tastes the same no matter where you drink it."
He sighed.
"I'll just go to her." As he made his way through the garden, a memory surfaced, Beth's voice, cold and sharp.
"The Duke is free to treat you as he sees fit. It's not your place to complain."
Even now, the memory still stung. "She can't talk to me like that forever," he thought as he neared the chateau.
The scent of roses filled the air.
The blooms really are something this time of year, he admitted silently. After the coronation, the Rose Chateau should be given to my sister.
It's always been the favorite's domain.
And now, that same former guest, Lucia, is the Duchess?
He scoffed.
Some might call her a princess, but that's by lineage alone.
Strip that away, and she's no more than a noble's daughter.
A gust of wind swept through the garden. As he braced himself, a hat landed at his feet.
He looked up.
Lucia stood ahead of him, slightly flushed.
Their eyes met. David paused, caught off guard. His own face grew warm.
From where she stood, Lucia remembered David Ramiz. His image had often appeared in her dreams. To her, he had always seemed like a man wearing a mask. Though she had only ever seen him from afar, something about his smile had unsettled her. It seemed forced, unnatural, as if he was trying too hard to appear kind, she had once thought. One moment, in particular, lingered in her memory. It had occurred during a ball, just before her marriage to Count Metten unraveled. She had noticed David speaking in hushed tones with a man in the corner of the room. That man, his Duke Ramiz's firstborn, isn't he? She had thought, watching curiously. He was usually surrounded by his followers at events like these, so what was he doing alone? She had drifted closer, just in time to overhear their conversation.
David's voice had grown sharp. What? Are you certain?
Is that truly what my father said? He demanded. Yes, my lord, the aide had replied solemnly. It appears His Grace intends to name your younger brother as his heir. David's expression had darkened. Lucia had watched from a distance, stunned. The look on his face had been unlike anything she'd ever seen from him, cold, furious, betrayed. That warm, rehearsed smile had vanished in an instant. She had brushed it off at the time, but something about that moment had unsettled her. Her heart had pounded with inexplicable dread, like a storm was brewing. After her marriage to Count Metten ended, Lucia had withdrawn from society. She took up work as a maid in a noble household, trying to bury the past. During those quiet years, she heard that Duke Ramiz had died, and David had inherited the title. It's tragic, a fellow maid had said. The Duke's second son died young, such a promising young man. But Lucia had never believed it was just an accident. The whispers said so, but her instincts screamed otherwise. Years later, even darker rumors emerged. Duke Ramiz had allegedly conspired to commit treason. His entire household was executed, along with members of the royal family. The queen consort, of House Ramiz, and the duke had plotted to place the crown prince on the throne. What became of David after that remained a mystery. Back in the garden, David approached, Lucia's hat in hand. This hat, he said smoothly, a symbol of a fateful meeting with a beautiful lady, landed at my feet. I return it to you, with the hope that we might continue this destined encounter. He bowed gracefully, eyes twinkling with charm. The moment I saw you, it felt as though a rose had taken human form. Lucia narrowed her eyes slightly, tension knotting in her chest.
Does he recognize me? Is that why he's saying these things?
Thank you for returning my hat, she said politely as she took it back. Thank goodness I followed Jerome's advice not to be alone today. David continued, unbothered. My lady, your radiant beauty is overwhelming. I feel as though I might go blind. Lucia flushed, uneasy. Why are you too kind?
I mean every word.
I am Count David Ramiz of House Ramiz. May I have the honor of knowing your name? And if you have a moment, might you join me for a walk? He gestured toward the rose-lined path, voice soft, coaxing. I hope the scent of these roses may inspire you to open your heart to me.
Before Lucia could respond, a cold voice sliced through the air. That won't be possible.
She has another engagement. Duke Hugo Taran stepped forward, his presence imposing. Both turned, startled. What are you doing? Lucia began, confused. Duke Taran. David muttered, visibly unsettled as Hugo wrapped an arm around Lucia. What business do you have with my wife? Hugo asked, his voice tight. Your wife. David echoed, stunned. His expression paled as he saw Lucia's blushing face in Hugo's hold. You mean she's the Duchess? That radiant beauty, she's his wife?
David's jaw clenched. Hugo's eyes darkened.
Maybe losing his sight would teach him not to act so foolish, he thought grimly. Lord Ramiz, he said icily, do not approach my wife in such a setting again. David straightened, trying to regain composure. With all due respect, Your Grace, you're overreacting. We were simply making idle conversation. And marriage doesn't turn a woman into property.
Hugo's fury spiked. To hell with consequences.
Maybe I should kill him right here.
But then his gaze fell on Lucia. He sighed, squeezing her shoulder gently. Damn it. Why does she have to be so beautiful?
Even fools like him flock to her. He had watched David from afar, growing more furious with each step the man had taken toward her. No other man needs to admire how lovely my wife is, he muttered under his breath. I didn't spend a fortune on her just to have others gawk at her. Then, he gave a cold smile. Duke Ramiz must have had the patience of a saint, because his son clearly believes he's immortal. David bristled. What did you just?
But Hugo's glare made him flinch. He stumbled and fell.
Run along, brat, Hugo thought, locking eyes with him before walking away with Lucia's hand in his. David remained frozen on the ground, stunned. Are you all right? Came a voice. Beth stood nearby, arms crossed. Of all the women, you chose to flirt with the Duchess.
Beth.
I didn't know she was the Duchess.
David protested. I thought she was the one. He clenched his fists and stood.
Unless it's urgent, Beth said. Coolly, you should leave. My guest is waiting. Do you mean Her Grace? David asked uncertainly. Beth gave him a pointed look. Didn't the Duke's warning get through that thick skull of yours? Don't be foolish. David scoffed.
You call that a warning?
He practically threatened to kill me.
You're exaggerating, Beth replied.
There's no law in the Empire that bans a married woman from talking to a man. David smirked.
Noblemen are allowed 1 or 2 lovers, aren't they?
Yes, but not in front of her husband, Beth snapped, now clearly uneasy. It was wrong of him to flirt with her, but the Duke, he overreacted. It was the first time she'd ever seen Duke Taran lose his composure like that. Ridiculous, but was the Duke jealous?
She thought, unable to shake the feeling.
Duke Hugo walked briskly through the palace gardens, gripping Lucia's hand as he led her through the rose mazes. Her brows were furrowed, her expression caught between frustration and confusion.
Hugh, what's going on? She asked.
Slow down. He came to an abrupt stop and turned to her. Without a word, he cupped her chin and kissed her, catching her off guard. She responded, and when they parted, both were slightly breathless, cheeks flushed. That designer needs to be fired, he said sharply.
Lucia blinked.
What?
Who told you to wear that?
To look like this.
His voice dropped.
You had to go and look so stunning. But, you were the one who took me to Madame Ant's boutique, she said, puzzled. You paid quite a bit for her services. You can't just fire her. She straightened her posture and met his gaze with quiet resolve. You're the one who said I should dress appropriately to reflect the Taran household's reputation. Have you forgotten?
Hugo exhaled sharply.
People have been looking at you far too much lately. He didn't say it aloud, but the thought burned in his mind. To hell with our reputation.
I just didn't want everyone else seeing her like this.
I bought those gowns because you wouldn't spend anything on yourself, he muttered.
I just wanted to see you happy.
I didn't mean for you to turn every head in the room.
Lucia's eyes narrowed.
You left in the middle of a conversation with Her Majesty.
That was extremely rude.
Hugo's frustration boiled over. Does that even matter right now?
She stared at him.
What do you mean? What happened? That man was making a pass at you, he said without hesitation.
Lucia looked genuinely surprised. What? Don't be silly.
He just picked up my hat and returned it to me.
I know what I saw, Hugo replied, voice tight.
That wasn't a simple gesture. He was flirting.
Lucia gave him a look.
You would know, wouldn't you? With your experience.
He flinched. You're overreacting, she said with a light laugh.
I won't do anything to disgrace the Taran name. You know that. That's not what I'm worried about, Hugo muttered, looking away.
The family name doesn't matter. I just dragged her here to the blooming yellow roses without thinking. Lucia tilted her head.
Then what are you worried about?
She followed his gaze to the rose bushes. Her eyes widened slightly.
These are roses, she thought. Jerome always said Hugo hated roses. He refused to let me plant them in the north.
Was that really true?
She looked at him, cheeks flushed. She reached out, gently taking his hand. Even if that man was trying to flirt with me, as long as I don't respond, it doesn't matter, right? She said softly. Hugo's gaze softened, and his cheeks reddened.
He said nothing.
Her Majesty is expecting us for tea. Do you have a moment to join us? She asked.
Yes, he said quietly. They resumed walking, still holding hands.
We need to get out of here, Hugo thought.
Away from all these roses.
After a moment of silence, Lucia spoke again. Hugh, this might sound strange, but I want to ask you something.
He raised an eyebrow.
Go ahead. Do you think there's a chance House Rhaemys might commit treason someday?
The question hit him hard.
Duke Rhaemys? A traitor?
He took a breath, his tone cautious. His served the crown faithfully. His daughter has 3 royal children. His built an ideal legacy. I doubt he'd throw it away. I'm not talking about now, Lucia said. I meant, far in the future.
When Count Rhaemys inherits the title. She paused, her expression uneasy. You're always careful, but earlier, it felt like you looked down on him. I hope he takes this seriously, she thought. When David becomes Duke.
Hugo said, more thoughtful now. He's just a spoiled young man at the moment.
But give it time, he might turn into someone much more cunning.
He fell silent, his mind racing. If Vivian's right and he does anything remotely treasonous,
I'll eliminate him before he can make a move.
He glanced at Lucia.
What made you even think of that?
She looked away.
Something about the way he looked at me earlier, it made me uncomfortable. And I can't even tell Hugh about the dream I had, she thought.
I'm sure it's nothing, she said aloud.
Forget I mentioned it.
Hugo gently took her hand again.
Are you worried about me?
Is that a bad thing? Not at all. He pressed a kiss to her hand. I appreciate it. But I don't want you to worry.
If anything becomes a threat, I'll take care of it.
Lucia smiled faintly. He always seems capable of handling anything.
With him, even the worst fears feel distant, like I'm protected by something invisible. That's what I love about him, she thought, blushing. I heard you ask Jerome about the yellow roses, Hugo said, his voice calm and direct.
Lucia looked up, caught off guard. His tone softened slightly.
In the future, just come to me directly, whether it's about the roses or anything else. His words, steady and warm, settled around her like quiet reassurance. But what if I end up bothering you by asking too often?
Lucia asked, her voice tentative.
You could never be a bother, Hugo replied with quiet certainty.
Lucia thought back to the early days of their marriage.
Hugo had always promised to be a devoted husband, and he never said things he didn't mean. Each evening, he would sit beside her and share his plans for the next day, where he'd be, what he'd be doing.
It had always brought her peace.
She never imagined him hiding anything from her. With a schedule so open, there was little room for secrets. That was Hugo, sincere and consistent. All right, she said softly, a small smile forming on her lips. Later, they sat with Beth for tea. Lucia hadn't expected him to stay. I assumed he'd leave once he'd spoken to the Duchess, Beth thought. I didn't expect him to sit down and join us. Though not one to entertain rumors, she found herself wondering if perhaps they were true. Watching them, she sensed something unspoken, familiarity, ease. Lucia, however, was distracted by something else.
He never told me why he came to find me. What did he want to talk about?
As she considered this, Hugo smirked slightly, licking his lips. The gesture made her blush instantly as memories of their kiss in the rose garden flashed in her mind.
Has he no shame?
She thought, averting her gaze. The Queen noticed her flushed cheeks. Is it too warm in here, Duchess? You look a bit flushed.
Lucia blinked, startled.
Oh, no, I'm perfectly fine, Your Majesty.
Trying to steer the conversation elsewhere, she turned to Hugo.
About that tea you mentioned earlier. Just then, one of the Queen's ladies-in-waiting entered quickly and whispered to Beth. The King has sent someone to find you, Duke Taran. The meeting is about to start, Beth relayed. Lucia turned to him in surprise. You have a meeting? She asked. She hadn't heard anything about it. She watched him in disbelief. Why is he sitting here so calmly if he's expected elsewhere?
Hugo stood after finishing his tea.
I'll take my leave now, he said to the Queen. May your meeting go smoothly, Beth replied with a polite smile. Likewise, Your Majesty, he responded. Before leaving, he turned to Lucia. Come with me for a moment.
Wordlessly, she followed him out of the Queen's parlor. Beth watched them leave, thoughtful.
There's no tension between them. In fact, The way they look at each other, it's almost like a secret affair. Outside, Lucia walked beside Hugo, flustered. What is it? Won't you be late? You really should go. Before she could finish, he pulled her into a hug. There are people around, she gasped, her heart racing. What are you doing?
But he didn't let go.
I'll be late today, he said softly.
I know.
You told me yesterday, she murmured, still dazed. Are you heading home after tea? He asked. Yes, once I've finished with Her Majesty.
He leaned closer and kissed her. There are people watching, she thought, but she couldn't pull away.
Wait for me, he said.
And try not to fall asleep first.
We've still got unfinished business. He kissed her cheek, then stepped away. Lucia stood there, stunned, her lips tingling. How can he kiss me like that in front of everyone? She thought, her cheeks burning. I'll definitely scold him for this later. Your Majesty, a voice called behind her. Lucia turned to find the Queen approaching, a knowing smile on her face. I was wondering why you hadn't returned, Beth said gently.
I was just about to come back, Lucia stammered.
Beth chuckled to herself.
So the rumors were true after all.
The Duke didn't take her north just for her beauty, there's something more between them.
She glanced at Lucia, amused.
Quays will be speechless when he sees how they really are together. But for now, I'll keep it to myself, it's too entertaining. A few days later, Lucia sat in her drawing room, reviewing a folder just delivered. Information on Countess Jordan, the hostess of tomorrow's tea party, Jerome explained.
Lucia skimmed the notes. Countess Jordan, 38. She and the Count have 2 sons and 5 daughters.
Of the 5, only the 3rd daughter is legitimate, a widely known fact.
She enjoys gardening and is an accomplished singer.
Is it normal to receive such detailed information before a party?
Lucia asked.
In her dreams, back when she was Count Matin's wife, no one had ever given her this kind of preparation. I always assumed they had a strong marriage because of their many children, she thought. I never imagined.
She glanced at the next page.
The tea party was originally meant to be a small gathering, Jerome continued. But once Your Grace accepted the invitation, others requested to be included. Now the guest list has grown significantly.
Lucia blinked.
So it's no longer just 10 people.
No.
The Countess has expanded it to 50 guests, Jerome confirmed. What?
Lucia exclaimed.
That night, Hugo asked about the party. You're going to the tea party tomorrow? Yes, she replied with a sigh. It sounds like it's going to be exhausting, Hugo noted. Why not skip it? He suggested.
We'll make sure no one notices you're not there.
You can always attend another one later. Lucia shook her head gently, a faint smile on her lips. I never imagined so many people would want to meet me. I'm surprised it's turned into such a big gathering. She paused, then added, Still, this isn't something I can treat lightly. Hugo frowned, concern tightening his expression. I just don't think it's worth the risk, he said, his voice firmer. I can't shake the feeling something might go wrong. What if something happens, like back in the north when you collapsed? Lucia looked at him, calm but determined.
It would be rude to cancel now.
If I don't show up, people will start talking. A trace of coldness crossed Hugo's face.
Then let them.
And they'll find out what it means to spread thoughtless rumors.
Lucia blinked in surprise.
I've never known anyone to go after gossip like that, she thought. Still, she smiled and replied. As long as I show up, there won't be anything for them to talk about.
I'll go. Hugo let out a sigh and brushed a hand through his hair. You really can be stubborn. What time does it end tomorrow?
Since it starts in the afternoon, it should wrap up before sunset, she answered. If you want to leave early, you can, he said. You're the Duchess. You don't need permission. The next morning, Fabian looked drained. I don't get why His Grace is fussing over this.
Since when does he care about gossip?
Is something going around?
Jerome asked quietly.
He's been under pressure lately.
Can't we get a break? Jerome thought. No one's ever had kind things to say about the Duke before. Is something happening between them?
Fabian frowned, his tone tense. Why is he suddenly so fixated on rumors?
Jerome hesitated. No, nothing like that.
Actually, they seem closer than ever.
More than they were in Roham. He flushed slightly.
After dinner, the servants steer clear of their chambers, he muttered. The atmosphere of the estate had shifted. Once cold and formal, it now felt warm. Her grace had brought change. The staff often whispered and giggled, noting how affectionate the Duke and Duchess remained even after a year. "So where is his grace now?"
Fabian asked. "He's not at the palace," Jerome replied. "He took her grace to the tea party.
"He'll be back soon." "A tea party?" Fabian asked, eyebrows raised. "Isn't that usually just for women?"
"He's just escorting her," Jerome explained patiently.
"Since when is that a thing?" Fabian asked again, baffled. "He seems like a different man." "I've seen some changes, especially with the errands he sends me on for her," Fabian thought.
"But this is something else entirely." Carriages pulled into Countess Jordan's manor.
"Oh, that's the Taran household's coach." "The Duchess must be arriving soon," the ladies murmured. "They say she just turned 20, and that she's quite beautiful." As the door opened, Duke Hugo stepped out first. "Is that Duke Taran?" Gasps rippled through the group. He reached in and gently helped Lucia down, his expression soft. Sophia Lawrence, standing among the ladies, stared.
"He's smiling?" she thought in disbelief.
Then he kissed Lucia's hand, and then her cheek. The entire scene unfolded before the stunned audience. Every noble lady in attendance saw it clearly. The rumors about the Duke and Duchess's closeness weren't exaggerated. The way he looked at her,
the way he lingered before letting her go. He was clearly in love.
"My goodness," one woman whispered. "I've never seen a husband escort his wife to a tea party before."
"And it's the Duke," another added.
Sophia Lawrence stood quietly, her expression unreadable.
Lucia stepped inside gracefully.
"Thank you for the invitation, Countess." "I'm so glad you could come, Your Grace," the Countess beamed.
"It's an honor.
And you're even lovelier than the rumors say." "She's really only 20. She looks young, but there's something about her.
Something commanding."
"She's got the same presence as the Duke," the Countess thought, observing her. Lucia kept her posture poised, recalling Aunt's strict advice.
"Think poise. Think elegance.
You want to give off an aura that says, 'Bow before me,'" Aunt had said with a terrifying look. "I've been trying to carry myself with that kind of dignity," Lucia thought. "I hope I'm doing it right."
A steward approached.
"This way, Duchess." Lucia followed until they reached the Countess's table, then stopped.
"Oh,
I didn't expect to be seated with Sophia." "I'm Sophia Elvin," the woman introduced herself calmly. "Wife of Count Elvin."
Lucia froze inside. "Elvin?
She's the Count's wife?" A memory flickered in her mind, from a dream, from another life. When she was a maid, she'd served Countess Elvin. But that woman wasn't Sophia. Her chest tightened. The future has changed.
Thank you for joining us on this incredible adventure. If you enjoyed what you watched, please consider liking, subscribing, and ringing that notification bell. Your comments mean the world to us and help us improve. The next episode promises even more excitement and unexpected twists, so stay tuned as we embark on this thrilling journey together. Keep the anticipation alive, and we'll catch you in the next episode.